I've spent the past 5 days going through every Ark myth I could find on the internet, and in this video, I'll be debunking all of them. I had a ton of fun going through these and actually learned quite a few useful tips and tricks, so if you enjoy or learn something, consider subscribing to help the channel reach 10,000 subscribers. Without further ado, let's get into number 1. Cactus Broth is not available on Aberration. This myth is actually the reason that I'm making this video. I've received hundreds of comments on my previous videos saying that Cactus Broth is not available on this map. You are incorrect. If you go to Glowtail Cave and you go behind this hidden rock in the back of the cave, you can actually find a drop behind this wall. This drop occasionally contains scorched earth items, and one of the items in the drop pool is the Thorny Dragon Saddle. Once you obtain a Thorny Dragon Saddle, simply bring it to an industrial grinder, grind it down 2 times, and you'll get cactus sap that's required to make the Cactus Broth. Using cactus sap is undoubtedly the best way to fight Rockwell, so this is a very important tip to know if you're playing on this map. So Cactus Broth not being available on Aberration is a myth. The second myth I found is that Yutyrannus roars can increase the amount of torpor that enemies take. Surprisingly, this is actually one of the 3 things on this list that isn't a myth. Using a Yutyrannus roar on a creature does make it take more torpor, and as long as the creature you're roaring at actually can get fear roared by the Yutyrannus and gets affected by it, you can use this trick to tame it more efficiently. In practicality, you probably aren't going to bring a Yutyrannus around with you to tame every single thing, but if you trap a really high level creature, why not use the Yutyrannus to save you some resources and increase taming effectiveness because you need less arrows to knock out the creature. 2 more things I should note here is that the torpor increase only occurs when the creature is fully fear roared, and you should also only do this if you have a creature trapped. A trap is just most effective here because chasing around a creature will waste you taming effectiveness as the torpor drops while you're chasing it. Yutyrannus roars increasing torpor taken is not a myth. The third myth I found is that males swing faster than females in Ark Survival Ascended. This is completely a myth. In Ark Survival Ascended, they completely removed this from the game. In Ark Survival Evolved, a male could swing a melee weapon faster than a female in any circumstance. This would include farming weapons like the pickaxe and axe, as well as melee damaging weapons like the sword and the pike. In Ascended, however, they actually got rid of this entirely, making males and females swing at the exact same speed. This means that the competitive edge for picking a male has been completely removed from the game, and female characters, which have a smaller hitbox, should be selected if you're in any competitive environment if you don't want to be playing at a disadvantage. Your character's gender mattering for melee speed in Ark Ascended is a myth. The fourth myth I found is that there's 0 benefit to having a larger character model. This, surprisingly, is actually a myth as well. When I saw this, immediately I said, oh yeah, that makes sense. But when I really dug into it, I found 2 super niche use cases where having a bigger character model than the base small size could be helpful. If you use a tall character as opposed to a short one, you'll technically have a slight advantage in a melee fight. This is because even though you have a bigger hitbox, you'll be able to land melee hits on the opponent's head more frequently if you're taller than they are. The other, even more niche use case than that one is that if you have huge arms, it can actually distribute damage from turrets onto the gauntlets more often than if you had small arms. In practice, this may only keep you alive for 1 or 2 more turret shots, but it technically could be useful. This is because turrets primarily kill you after they break an armor piece of yours, so if your gauntlets take a couple of bullets so your leggings don't break as quickly, it will keep you alive just a little bit longer. Do either of these make having a big character more worth it? Absolutely not. But saying there is no benefit is a myth. The size of your character in PvE is totally irrelevant, by the way. This is only relevant to PvP. So another one that I've seen is that Argentavis can be instantly tamed if they harvest a corpse right before you knock it out. I actually used to use this during Ark Evolved a lot of the time, but when I've tested it in Ark Survival Ascended, it just hasn't worked for me. In Ark Survival Evolved, if you knocked out an Argentavis which had the corpse harvesting buff on it when it got knocked out, its food would drain almost instantly and the tame would be automatic. Automatic may be the wrong descriptive word, but the tame was almost instant and immediate, so I'm calling it automatic because it was an automatic process where you knocked it out and you'd have it tamed seconds later when you put the meat in its inventory because it already was hungry. It seems they've changed 2 things in Ark Ascended to make this not work anymore. The first is that the RG just does not harvest the corpse when its torpor is super high anymore. It used to do this very regularly in Evolved, but it doesn't seem to do it in Ascended for my testing. I put this on 100x speed and it didn't harvest the corpse for 3 minutes. When it harvested the corpse, it was down to 2.6 out of 3.6k torpor, so you had to get it up pretty high with the torpor after it harvested that corpse. When I eventually actually got it to consume that corpse and then knock it out, it still didn't even have the hunger drain, so even after all this effort, it didn't work anyway. It's a shame they removed this because it was really fun to use and it was a cool little tech to have, but yeah, in 2025 in Ark Ascended, this is a myth. Another myth that I saw online is that you can place a single door inside of a double door frame. This used to work in Ark Evolved, but they fixed all the snapping stuff in Ark Ascended in this sense, so it doesn't work anymore. It did look ridiculously stupid and was pretty funny to pull off. I actually had this on one of my bases for about 3 months, 4 years ago, and it was very fun to use. But it has been removed as of Ark Survival Ascended, so this doesn't work anymore. Another claim I found online is that it doesn't matter what type of gateway you use, as they're all the same size, and the only determining factor for what material you should make your gateways out of is if they can survive the creature you're trying to trap. This was not true in Ark Survival Evolved, but it is in Ark Survival Ascended, so it's not a myth. In Ark Survival Evolved, it was proven that the reinforced gateway had the smallest hitbox out of all of them, which was the cherry on top for why it was the best trap choice in the game, because obviously the best reason for it is it was the most cost effective while not breaking to creatures. The second best reason for it was because it actually worked for every creature. For example, a tech gateway or an Adobe gateway in Ark Survival Evolved would not trap a mana garmer, but in Ark Survival Ascended, all the gateways trap the exact same creature types, all of them trap a mana garmer, so you can use whatever you want for any situation. Myth 8 is that bigger crop plots grow crops faster. This simply isn't true. The size of your crop plot only matters for what size of crops you can actually put inside of the plots. I ran a test where I put a mejoberry seed in every single crop plot size inside of the same greenhouse, and the sizes all grew at the same speed. The best advice I can give for choosing a crop plot size is just based on what you need. If you're trying to grow tinto berries for med brews, why use anything larger than a small crop plot when they do the same job at a more space efficient rate? If you're trying to grow plant species Z grenades to go tame a Yiling, obviously you have to use a large crop plot in that case. So yeah, crop plot size affecting the speed of crop growth rate is a myth. The 9th claim I've seen online is that the Yutyrannus is just a flying Pegamastix and they're both useless as tames. This is also a myth, as the Pegamastix and Yutyrannus have completely different stealing mechanics, behaviors, and utility when tamed. The Pegamastix will steal your item from your last hotbar slot and then run away with that item. If that slot is empty, they take a random item out of your inventory and run away with that instead. The Ichty, on the other hand, will steal any consumable from your inventory and instantly eat it. If you don't have any consumable, it will take a random item out of your inventory and eat that instead. There's also an 8% chance that the Ichty will take your weapon out of your hand and disarm you, dropping the item somewhere nearby. This dropped item falls into the mesh extremely often, so good luck finding that Mastercraft crossbow you spent so long making. The Yutyrannus also continues coming back for more, which is very different from the Pego's fleeing nature. As tames, they're both useful. The Pegomastix collects Gacha crystals passively in Ark Ascended, which is super useful for making an automatic farm. The Yutyrannus is insanely underrated as a tame as well. It can be set to hunt and retrieve, where it can kill fish, including piranhas, and bring the body back to you. The body will glow gold, and you can harvest it for raw prime fish meat. This is exceptionally useful for taming otters, as you can kill the salmon it retrieves for great effectiveness. It can also hunt dodos, which brings back dodos with a glowing aura as well, and you can get raw prime meat from those. It's just a really good way to get prime meat of both the fish and normal variety in the early game. The Yutyrannus and Pegomastix being useless tames and behaving the same way are both myths. The 10th claim I've seen online is that you can't swim on flyers. And while this is true for most flyers in the game, it is not true for every single one. Let me introduce you to the Pelagornis. All you have to do to pull this off is spam the land flyer button ridiculously quickly. If you slow down your spamming or even just stop spamming at all, the Pelagornis will simply float back to the surface. It will not dismount you at all. This is the only flyer that doesn't instantly dismount you when you're under the water in the entire game, so it is pretty cool. The Pelagornis can't attack while you're under and doing this though, because if it attacks, it'll float right back out to the surface because you had to slow down the spam just to get an attack animation off, so you can't go diving for penguins. The 11th claim on this list, and one that I've been seeing a lot recently, is that the Deinosuchus being released makes the Sarco completely unusable. This one is subjective for sure, but in my opinion, it's a myth. The Sarco is definitely not as powerful as the recently added Deinosuchus, but it's better in some aspects. The Sarco is significantly faster in water. It's the better choice for underwater farming in my opinion, just because the speed is relevant when both of these creatures can get stunned by jellyfish and eels. And it's absolutely the best choice for running the underwater caves, because yet again, both of these creatures aren't optimal if you're trying to go through the entire cave and clear all the creatures, because they'll both die to being stunned by the jellyfish. You have to run through it quickly, and the Sarco is far better at that. At number 12, I have another take about the Deinosuchus, but this time it's about his aggro mechanics. The theory was that the Deinosuchus, whether tamed or wild, couldn't be aggroed by any wild creature. This is not the case. When the creature was originally released, there was a glitch going around where you didn't get aggroed by any wild creature, but it was patched a few weeks or maybe a month after it was released to the game. It was so strong when it was originally released to the base game from the Ark Editions mod that you could straight up walk it through the tech cave, get aggroed by 0 of the creatures in there, and then fight the Overseer boss where no drones were attacking you because they also refused to attack the Deinosuchus. This was very obviously a glitch though, because that's just not how any tamed creature acts inside of the game. It was patched, and now it acts like any other creature. That being said, the wild Deinosuchus still doesn't get aggroed by anything in the wild, which is pretty funny. The Ceratosaurus, for example, is a hyper-aggressive carnivore that attacks things way above its weight class, but even it will avoid the Deinosuchus. So the Deinosuchus being a free ticket to the island ascension is a myth. At number 13, my favorite one on the entire list, it is difficult to die of fall damage in Ark. And in my opinion, this is not a myth. To prove my point, here's a list of every method to avoid dying to fall damage that I know of personally. Hugging the cliffside as you fall to prevent momentum, disconnecting right before you hit the floor and reconnecting to slow momentum, going unconscious before you fall or while you're falling to knock out, which means you don't take fall damage when you're unconscious, being over 440 HP, which just is a flat, you will survive everything because the max fall damage is in the 430s, dismounting off your creature right before you hit the floor so you don't take fall damage and your creature doesn't take fall damage, using a parachute, using a grappling hook, falling into the water, spamming the inventory key in a laggy server to kill momentum, or just using a flare gun. With all these methods in the game and more that I haven't even mentioned, I actually do agree with the statement, dying of fall damage in Ark is hard to do. Dying to fall damage does happen to everybody, but it's definitely easier than people think it is, so I do agree with this take. The 14th myth is one that I've seen extremely commonly, and it's that Gigas and Karkas do not spawn on Extinction Ascended. This is just not true. When I was working on Extinction Ascended videos when the map recently dropped, I actually saw both of these in the wild, so I can personally confirm that they are there. What I've heard a lot of the time is that there's problems for spawning them on stuff like Nitrado. I can't speak to that as I don't use the Nitrado service, but I can guarantee you the fact that they do spawn on single player and official servers in the strip surrounding the snow biome in the wasteland. One more really cool thing about these creatures on Extinction Ascended is that there's actually a tech Giga in the game now. This is exceptionally rare as it's a 5% spawn chance on the Giga spawn instances, which is already a super rare creature. For those curious, the Tech Giga would have landed at number 4 on my rarest creatures ranking for those who had watched that video. And last but not least is the claim that Ark Ascended and Ark Evolved are basically the same game. While this is definitely the most subjective thing on this list, in my opinion, it's definitely a myth. If you guys have been watching me for a while, you know that I do like to stick it to wildcard and make fun of them whenever I have the chance, but in this situation, I just can't. While they're certainly similar games, there's a notable amount of new mechanics and creatures in Ark Ascended, and with more new maps on the way, the game is going to keep separating itself from its predecessor as time goes on. While I do have issues with the way they're monetizing the game, I can't see the argument that Ascended is just an evolved clone at this point. Whether you like their monetization methods or absurdly delayed schedule or not, that is just the reality of the game at this point. Creature and weapon traits, new turret types, a handful of new creatures, a new vehicle, and a load of other gameplay changes like wild babies are just the main examples that I can think of off the top of my head. It's just not the same game anymore, it gives you a different experience than Evolved, and it's okay to say that, even though the game is flawed. If you want to see more of me debunking Ark myths, get this video to 1,000 likes and comment sharing an Ark myth that you want me to test out. If you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy the video on screen now where I list off 20 minutes of completely useless Ark information. See you there, bye!